Hi everyone, so my name is Evi. I am a Greek who lives in London and I'm a data activation lead at Google. What exactly do I do? Sometimes I don't even know myself, but it's okay. The main thing is that I work with big clients, as Rufo said. Think about the companies that operate globally, that have an online or a retailer, mostly a retailer business. And they have media across different acquisition channels. They have big systems, internal, from CRM, databases that they are using to operate. And I try to mix them all together. And the most important thing is that I try to make something that is actionable at the back of it. And by actionable, I mean that someone can make a decision, someone can actually see something happening, so that things can happen a lot faster and a lot easier. So it is something that I have been working on for about 5 years in analytics and attribution, or the measurement space as it is. And today I really want to share some things with you that could help you. Like, the ultimate goal is to make something that actually helps you. So the easy and very quick icebreaker with something like that, can I see just like raise of hands how many people have a startup or they're starting a startup? That's good. So for those of you that you do not see yourself, pretty much everyone, it's about 50%, which is quite an important thing. And the main question is, what is success? And the first thing that I say to my clients, and the first thing I'm going to say to you, that you need to think what success means to you. So that's the first one. It's a journey, as Rufo said, so let's get going. What you always do is you need to start with the person who is going to buy your products. So the example that I have here is for a guy called George, pretty much around my age, 32. He has a family, 2 young kids, and his wife is pregnant. So they're waiting for a new one. And that's the state that he's currently looking for a new car. And he has different options, he hears things. So let's say that you, as a business owner, you are going to make the new Tesla. So you are in the other side. You want to see how George is going to decide and ultimately buy the car that you are selling. Let's have a look at how he works and how he operates online. The easiest thing, the first thing that it will come to your mind, you're going to go into your search engine and you're actually going to search a few things. What does he search? Minivan? Well, 3 kids, he definitely needs to have a lot of space. Whatever brand, and deals, because he's okay, he's affluent, but he doesn't mean that he doesn't want a good deal. That's not, though, the only thing that he does. He's going to see ads, he's going to search on search engines, he's going to be talking to his friends on social media, and all of that are not the only thing that takes into account his customer journey. So if you want to hear or write down some terms, the customer journey is what you really need to consider. The touch points are never just a few. So even if someone has 1 or 2 channels for acquisition, for marketing, doesn't mean that your customers are only going to be interacting with them. And the most important thing is that almost more than 70% of that activity is currently being done on your mobile devices. And that is something that has pretty much broken measurement. That means that you can't really know who is doing what, how is this happening. So there are different things that we need to take into consideration. And definitely mobile is one of the key ones. So how do we go about fixing that? You, as an entrepreneur, how are you ensuring that you are close to these customers? The easy answer, and hopefully it's going to be obvious for many of you, is that you need to have the customer at the very center of your strategy. It's not enough anymore to consider about your just your product, your cost per acquisition, the things that are important for you. It's really important to think and shift the angle of how your customers are interacting with your brand. The other thing that is quite important is to consider, as I said earlier, what success means to you, and try to speak the same language within your startup. That means that your marketing team are going to know exactly what your development team is doing, your product is aligned with what your sales are doing, and you're all having the same goals. And goals can be translated into questions, and questions can then be translated into metrics. And once you have the same metrics, you know what kind of data you need to collect so that you can take decisions on the back of them. So the main shift, and this is what it's a main thing, and the same way that I'm trying to share that knowledge with you, we try to do that internally with our own clients at Google, is to change that mentality from the channel, from a small silo here to someone else, cubicle on the other side of the room, to think about bringing them all together and have them connected into a customer-centric approach. How do you do that? It's a mentality shift to begin with. Many times I say that it's all about the change management, the discussion. You really need to speak within your company and identify these things. 3 pillars that we work with internally, and we have seen that they can actually be the key to the success for any kind of company, such as yours. The first one, measure what matters. It's not about having something that collecting data set from here, something on the other side just for the sake of it. It's not about the volume, it's about the quantity of the data you have. So you need to make sure that whatever you're gathering is going to give a specific output. The second one is about measure what's working. Sometimes you might not have the scale, the type of developers that that can actually work on certain tools, and that's okay. As an entrepreneur, you're going to have different phases in your experience, and that is something that is completely understandable. What is important is at every stage to appreciate the fact that I cannot reach B, but I can find an estimate. So something that I can use as a proxy to measure the success of my business and operate this and alternate so that at the next level you can go a bit closer. And the last one is measure what's possible. And possible from a feasibility perspective, but also from an actionability perspective. And what I mean by that is, let's say that it's one of the questions that we've been hearing a lot in the past almost week and a half now here at the summit is how can mobile help me, mobile advertising help me increase my revenue? Which is a very fair discussion, but it is quite an open question. So you need to bring it down to something that is more tangible and within the reach within your own hands. So you need to think about these components. And these 3 mindsets are effectively the main starting point so that you can define your own models and the way that you can have your own success. So, as we said, it's a journey, and the whole point is not about becoming the best, it's about becoming better than what you are right now. One of the things of a colleague of mine is always trying to say to his client is that don't let the best be the enemy of your better self. So you really need to think about the incremental success that you can have within your business. And there are 2 aspects that you need to keep in mind. That measurement as it is currently being described in the industry, is composed of two main things. The first one is the analytics, and the second one is the attribution. A bit of definition, just to get a bit of understanding. Analytics is collecting all the information and the insights for your customer's experience. How do they reach your website? How do they navigate these things? What kind of screens do they see in your app? Where do they stop? How often do they come? Analytics can give you answers to then fix the experience on your website and your app, but also look back into your marketing so that you can know how to best position your acquisition channels and make sure that whatever you are using over there from a campaign point of view actually brings back. The second one, attribution, is slightly different because what it does is that it gives you the kind of information to know that all the different touch points of your marketing activity, how much did they contribute to the revenue and the goals that you have set on your website. So you're thinking about it from a different mindset. You're looking at this in an expanded way. So these two things together don't work in isolation. Usually you need to have great analytics as a basis so you can then go and work with your attribution. You need to think of them as things working together, but never in parallel. And this is effectively the journey that you have to take as a company so that you can grow from the very beginning. And how do we go about doing that? Well, I'm a bit obsessed with it, so I really want to know what are the questions that I want to answer. So the first thing that you need to answer yourself is like, what do I need to know? What are the 5 things, or 3, limited to as low or as high as you want, but make it within your own reach? What exactly do you want to know? So let's say my channels, how are they performing? My campaigns, how much money do I spend on them? And how much revenue do they bring them back? Have those things in your mind and then work backwards so that you can identify what you need to do in order to answer these questions. I'm going to spend a bit of time on the attribution, which has been quite a topic in the past weeks. And I can only extrapolate that and say that many of you would like to hear something like that as well. As we've said earlier, attribution is about finding the value of your marketing, your acquisition channels, compared to the revenue and the conversions that happen on your website or on your app. And there are different types of attribution, and these are the key 4 ones. So one, intra-channel. Let's say that you have paid search activity and display advertising, or in this scenario, generic search and brand. How do they two work together? So you need to understand what kind of keywords you need to put into your paid activity compared to the organic, fix your SEO and whatnot. Online to offline. It's a classic problem because obviously we don't have the same kind of tracking activity within offline activity. And by offline, I mean anything from a flyer that you might give to an event, or if you're scaling and you want to see your company's logo on a bus station, that's also part of the offline advertising. It's not hard, but it can happen. So online to offline, especially if you have a brick and mortar store or vice versa, is also a kind of attribution that you need to consider. Cross-channel. When you have activity from one channel to the other and you need to understand the same thing, how do they work in conjunction? A classic thing that you probably have seen, especially if you are in the late stages, is that some type of social activity works best with paid search. So you need to bring them together and have your team working on that. And the last one is cross-device. It's not a new thing that mobile is the most important key driver in your business, but also in your consumer's life. So you need to have that into consideration and see how you can track things within the different devices that your average consumer has. From the actual modeling perspective, different ways, and I could even say that this one is being ordered from the easiest or the simplest logic to the more advanced. First interaction, if you have different things, that's the first one you come. Last one is pretty much synonymous to what analytics tools are doing. They're always tracking the last point. Linear, let's say that all different touch points have the same kind of value for your business, so you give them an equal amount. Position-based, let's say that you want to really target the people who are first interacting with your brand and then give some extra value to the activity that comes at the end. Data-driven is not just a set of rules. It goes a bit further into the regressions or statistical analysis, or even further down to the machine learning, where you appreciate all kinds of events, not just the ones that are leading to a conversion. So it's a bit step forward from what traditional analytics tools can give you at this point. How do you decide between all of them? Usually, a tool that you can select is going to make that decision for you, and that's perfectly okay. It's better to have something than nothing at all. And the more advanced you become within your business, then you can see the limitations of other tools and grow with that. But it is perfectly okay to use any tool that works for your business with the information that you have right now. And I cannot stress that enough. For instance, let's say that for a strategy perspective, when you are at the initial awareness and you want to bring some clients in, you're probably going to be more aggressive in the type of advertising you have. Then you need to go to that scale and think about some position-based or first click. Google search might be your best friend, so all of these things are definitely available, and there's a lot of bibliography from marketing agencies to researchers to maths and Wikipedia links, so you can learn more about that. So give it a go. I think it's quite worthwhile to think, as we said earlier, on where you are, at what stage, and what are the needs and the questions that you need to answer so that you can decide the tools that you're going to use. Very quick observation about the data-driven, and that is primarily driven from some discussions that I had from the previous days with some of the companies that are here in Summit, and they've been telling me how they have been doing not just regression analysis, but a bit of more on the ML side of things with Markov models and some like very cool stuff. And I just want to show you that the way that it works is that it's not looking at just one snapshot, similar to how Google Analytics does, but it takes into consideration the presence or the non-presence. So what is the incremental value that another channel is giving when your consumer is being faced with 3 different touch points? And that is pretty much the very easy and probably very simplistic way of explaining that, but that is the key essence. And that is something that you need to keep in mind so that you don't get fascinated by someone that tells you that does machine learning attribution and it's an amazing new tool. That's great, but do you really need that? Or using something simpler, something that your team knows and can action upon it, is probably going to be more beneficial for your business. It's not about just the tool, so it's about the kind of decisions that you can make out of every single report. Another thing that I really want to emphasize here is that many times, many of the mentor companies here, they've been asking me, how can we do reporting? I want to have my reporting for analytics and then my reporting for attribution, and I can't bring them together and nothing works, and my DevOps are going to drive me insane because there's nothing over there. I'm like, great. What is the question that you want to answer? Once you identify that, then you can know that a single query can actually fix that. So you probably don't need something too elaborate. It's something that you can find within your CSV, or you can find from a tool. A snapshot that I have here is from Google Analytics, the free version. There's nothing that publicized about that. And what it says is, what is the percentage of the assisted conversions? Let's say that the channel that has been before the final touch point, before your consumer reaches your website, has helped in that process and how much revenue they're bringing. So just from a very simple report, from a free tool that has no strings attached to it, can give you a lot of information about how your acquisition channels are performing and how you need to group that activity together so that you can make some decisions on the back of it. It's quite cool. In general, if you have identified your problems and the questions that you need to answer and you have everything you need, there are 5 things that you need to consider. And that's pretty much the process that you're trying to do, even if you are just starting up or you are a very big company. The first one, data collection. Track everything that your consumer interacts with, and that is your apps, your website, any server logs, if you have some offline activity or something that is relevant, and obviously the advertising that you have. It's important to be able to speak the same language, as I was saying earlier, but making sure that everything that your customer interacts with has a context and a meaning for you, so that you can actually understand what is happening with that. The 3 main pillars, the pre-processing, the conversion paths, and the attribution modeling, this is usually something that is being bundled within the tools that you're going to use. I do find it quite important to know what is happening so that you don't think that it's something of a magic. Pre-processing, whenever you collect your data, you need to normalize, you need to think about the things that are taking in place, and making sure that you have your data sets in a position that you can actually use them. From a conversion point of view, your user, your customer, is interacting with different points. And if they are seeing a linear way, you need to see the data in a linear way as well and put them in order. And modeling, it's the part that we were speaking of earlier, the different types of model. Either that is the last click in a simple analytical way, or position-based or whatnot. And these solutions are pretty much part of the settings that you will be able to configure within every tool that you have. And the last one is learn. Learn of what is actually has happened within your customers. Try to understand these patterns and try to think whether the activity that you presented to them is consistent with what they reported back, because it's a reporting and you need to close that loop. One of my colleagues had said a few days ago something to some startups, and it was fascinating for me. And it was mostly from the product side. So take she suggested to take one user, isolation, and download their server logs, understand exactly where they went. Don't look at the aggregate that you usually see, but just look at one. Does it make sense? Is it something that you were expecting? If yes, then probably you're in a good place. If not, iterate and do it all over again and see where you're going to get it right. Reporting. I love reporting, but as I said earlier, I love the actual questions more, and I want to know exactly what I'm trying to do. So don't do things just for reporting's sake. Do things because you want to do something, which leads to the most important part, the activation. In activation, what you need to do is update your keywords that work better so that you have more users coming in from the same keywords. Stop keywords that are not actually bringing any revenue. They're not bringing you users that are actually spending money on your product, and so on and so forth. But this process doesn't end there. You have to do it all over again, because with practice and optimization, you become better, and the more sophisticated your product becomes, more sophisticated your measurement system needs to be as well. That brings to the million-dollar question: what is the best system that I can use so that I can do all of these things? Great stuff. There's no such thing as one solution for everything. And I think that is actually a good thing, because it gives you a lot more power to customize the solution based on your needs. And think that it's not just about having the best, think about having the one that really works for you at the moment of your business. It's an equation of how to make that decision, though. It's not something that just comes with intuition or because the CTO of the other startup works with you in the same co-working space. Although sometimes it helps because you have better support. Here I have a few of the types of tools, both primarily on the analytics space, that are available right now. Some are free, some are paid, they have different models and different kinds of features. You need to think about what kind of devices you need to track, or how many entities you interact with your customers, what kind of budget do you have, and for how long can you sustain that budget. If you have a good dev team, or you need to have something that caters more to a less technical person, and many, many other things. The unknown X is the questions and needs that you have at that particular moment. And you really need to think about these things. So choose wisely. Don't make a fast decision. Make sure that you think about this so that you can take the leap of faith and proceed and work with your measurement system. And it's very important to have your blocks, as I call them, the building blocks ready. And it's okay to not have all the answers at the right moment, but let's have just the lower line. So I'll elaborate a bit on that. TMS, Tag Management System. If you have a website, you need to have a tag management system. I don't care which one. I can recommend a few enterprise models, free, from different companies that integrate with 1,000 things. Great. As long as you are using a tag management system, you are setting your business for better success, and you're probably going to ensure that your developers are going to stay within your startup for a longer time, because they're not going to have to do deployments every single moment you think of another thing to implement. And it is helping almost up to 70% more. SDKs, it's the equivalent. Don't write things in isolation. Think wisely about how you build the architecture of your mobile apps. Either it's going to be a hybrid or a native. Think about the way of making that into nice blocks so that you can implement code and test things as easily as possible. And all right, we have our infrastructure, we have things to set it up. How and what do we put in to fill that in? That's pretty much what your measurement plan is going to need to have. What is that? It can be a spreadsheet or a document, but have somewhere written the questions that you need to answer. What are the things that you're saying, the kind of metrics that you want, so that it flows and that you can all speak the same language. Think about it as a Bible in between the different types of your startup. So product and marketing and sales, they all need to think about the same way. The so what? Think about every single time that you want to add a new tag or you want to have a new metric, what's in it for you? And more importantly, what's in it for the customer? If you're adding a new feature, what does it give them? And usually, by having these questions and challenging each other, you're going to find out what are the ones that really matter. And then you can prioritize a lot better and have a better flow within your system. Campaign tagging. I hear many times that I have social media and paid search and some small display and my AdWords are worth, but there are different people who are working on that. Perhaps it could be a friend, but not everyone is speaking about the same language. try to think about a consistent way of naming your campaigns and keeping that as you grow. The moment you have this, you can translate that both into your internal reporting, but also into the experience that you have with your customer, because effectively you're having a conversation. So you need to think about speaking the same language. Any types of experiments and things you need to do, it's just building on block. And at the top line, I don't know, I have some questions as well. I have some open items. But for me, what is important is to start building from the ground up and thinking about the things that really matter to you. So a few suggestions. If you're going to speak and discuss with some of your developers and your marketing guys, bring them together and think about the different kinds of building blocks that have your business. So allow me to elaborate a bit on this here. On the first side, in the left hand, you have all the types of acquisition channels that are working for you. You could have email activity, you could have some ads running out of AdWords, you can have some social media, either sponsored posts or just organic, and your standard organic search. These are your channels, and you need to know that these are the ones that can only bring a customer from the outer space or somewhere near Madrid into your website. And you need to have them in line. What I recommend, and that's really based on some of the free tools that Google has right now, is, as I said earlier, always use a tag management system and always use an analytics tool so that you can have that information of how your users come in and then see what they're doing over there. The whole point is not just to see and understand what is happening, by try to bring some of that knowledge back into the channels that bring your customers in. Either that is a better content on your website, or a missed screen because that one is not used anymore. So this is the kind of actions that you need to take so that you can make your product a lot better. Obviously, if you have both app and a web presence, things get a bit more complicated. Another suggestion that I would have is to use, obviously, Firebase for the app, because it's something that you can use almost as a container, and the tag manager on the website to have pretty much the same thing, and connect the two at the level of the Google Analytics so that you can start seeing your users across both entities. There are different kinds of things that you definitely can give you the baseline to start understanding how many people are coming from my website to my app. If there is a subscription model within your app, do they engage more within the website or the app? How can I work with them in synergy? And furthermore, how can I learn from their activity to actually bring more things in? So there are different types of tricks and implementations that are quite simple for a developer who is quite familiar with most of these tools, either being JavaScript or on mobile platforms, so that they can actually implement these things a lot faster. And always think about the things that you need to bring back. Anything that you, from these tools, all the features that they allow you to do things faster and with connection back to your acquisition channels, use them, because that's something that's going to save you a lot of time. May the force be with you, because as we said, it is a journey, so it's not something that's going to finish early. But the important thing is that it's going to take a lot of interesting findings along the way, so that you have a better understanding of where your customers are and how these things are working. And the more important thing is that you have the ability to understand better how your customers behave. Think like them so that you can actually gain them and gain their trust so that you can have a successful startup. Thank you so much.